All right. So, have you ever heard of a nightclub where the big attraction isn't the music but the ghosts? That's what we're diving into today.
Oh, wow.
Bobby Mackey's Music World.
I've heard of this place, yeah.
Yeah. So it's in Kentucky.
hmm
It's a honky tonk, but it's got like this seriously spooky past, and that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Yeah, what makes Bobby Mackey so fascinating is, it's just steeped in layers and layers of history, and each one seems to just add to that really unsettling atmosphere.
And we're talking like unsolved murders, mob ties, all this crazy stuff.
Yeah,
Enough eerie encounters to make you know, sleep with the lights on for weeks.
definitely.
And we've got a ton of sources on this.
Oh, cool.
We've got newspaper articles, eyewitness accounts. We even have a legal case we're going to be looking at that involves a ghostly attack.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So buckle up because this one's going to get pretty intense.
So imagine a place where, the very ground you're standing on is just stained with the echoes of violence and tragedy.
Ugh, God. That's the kind of energy we're dealing with at Bobby Mackey's.
So let's rewind way back, okay?
Okay.
To the 1850s.
Wow.
This is way before Bobby Mackey even thought about opening a nightclub.
Okay.
This property in Wilder, Kentucky,
hmm
it was a slaughterhouse and meatpacking plant.
Okay, so at the heart of this operation, there was this deep well.
Yeah.
They used it to collect animal blood and fluids, just really gruesome stuff.
Yeah, that's awful.
And it becomes a really central point in a lot of the dark legends surrounding this entire property.
Okay, so why? What happens?
Well, in 1896, a young woman named Pearl Bryan was found murdered very, very close to that abandoned slaughterhouse.
Oh, God.
And her case, to this day, remains unsolved. It just gripped the nation.
Wow.
Imagine, like, the horror.
Yeah.
A pregnant 22-year-old found decapitated.
Oh, my God, that's terrible.
Her killers, Scott Jackson and Alonzo Walling, they were caught eventually and executed.
Okay.
But Pearl's head was never found. That's a detail that that sends shivers down your spine, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And to add to the intrigue, one of those killers, he actually vowed to return and haunt that very place where her head was supposedly left.
So, I mean, you have to wonder, right?
Yeah.
Did the brutality of her death, like, imprint itself on this location?
Oh, yeah?
Did it make it a magnet for other tragic events?
Wow. I mean, that's a question that kind of hangs heavy over the whole history of this place.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, it's like the property itself just became this conduit for darkness.
Exactly.
Then we fast forward to the 1930s.
Okay.
Slaughterhouse is gone,
Uh-huh.
replaced by a casino and restaurant called the Primrose.
Okay, the Primrose. It
Yeah.
had illegal gambling, rowdy crowds, and all of that just attracted the attention of the mob during Prohibition.
Oh, so even before we get to the ghosts, we already have this history of just violence and bloodshed baked into this place.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's wild. So organized crime, they take over the club, they rename it the Latin Quarter.
The Latin Quarter.
Okay.
And it flourished for a while, more than a decade.
Really?
Yeah, until the authorities shut it down in 1961.
Well, this property, it just seems to have a life of its own.
Yeah.
Like a pulse that keeps beating no matter what.
Uh-huh.
And in the 1970s, it reemerges again, this time as a hard rock cafe,
Okay.
catering to a younger, kind of wilder crowd, right?
Yeah, so we're talking like bar fights, accidents. There were even a couple of shootings in the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
It's like the place itself was attracting trouble, just fueling this cycle of violence.
So by 1978, even the Hard Rock Cafe closes its doors and leaves behind this legacy of just unease and unsettling energy.
Right.
And that's when Bobby Mackey enters the picture.
Okay.
He's a country singer, and he's got this dream of opening his own nightclub.
And he saw potential in this old roadhouse, completely oblivious to the darkness that was just like permeating the walls.
Yeah, he was really determined to make this place a success.
Yeah.
But his wife, Janet, felt something was off from the moment they stepped foot on the property.
I mean, it's almost like, Janet, she was more sensitive to the unseen world.
Yeah.
And she picked up on that negative energy that Bobby seemed to miss completely.
Right. So what did she sense? Like what was she seeing or feeling?
She described seeing this shadowy figure in a doorway.
Oh God.
And hearing these like phantom arguments coming from the empty kitchen, just those classic signs of a haunting.
So Janet's discomfort, this kind of becomes a recurring theme in this whole story.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like she's like the canary in the coal mine, right?
Uh-huh.
She's sensing this danger that everybody else seems to miss.
Exactly.
And Bobby, God love him, he was just like the ultimate skeptic.
Yeah.
He just brushed off Janet's concerns. He was like, oh, she's just nervous or she's got an overactive imagination.
But you have to wonder, Ray.
Yeah.
Was Bobby's skepticism like a form of self-preservation?
Interesting.
Was he like consciously or unconsciously shielding himself from this truth that he just wasn't ready to face?
It's possible. I mean, he was so laser focused on making this nightclub a success that just, nothing, not even spooky stories was going to stand in his way.
Right, but those spooky stories, they were about to get a whole lot spookier.
Oh, no.
And this is all thanks to a young man named Carl Lawson.
Carl Lawson. Okay, so who is this guy?
Well, Carl just kind of showed up at the club one day, offering his help to Bobby and Janet.
Yeah.
He'd worked at the Hard Rock Cafe, so he seemed to know the place pretty well.
Okay.
But unlike Bobby, Carl, he wasn't afraid to talk about the ghosts. He acknowledged their presence. He even referred to them as his friends.
So, I mean, this raises the question.
Yeah.
Was Carl drawn to the paranormal activity? Or was there something about him that was attracting it?
Yeah, it's hard to say.
And unfortunately for Janet, Carl's presence didn't exactly ward off this negative energy.
Yeah, just a few days after Carl started working at the club, Janet had this really terrifying encounter in the kitchen.
Oh, God, what happened?
This wasn't, just a fleeting shadow or a disembodied voice.
Oh,
This
no.
was a physical attack,
Really?
a deliberate attempt to harm Janet.
So, like, what happened?
She was alone in the kitchen, and the sink suddenly filled up with this thick, red liquid.
Okay.
I mean, it was blood, or at least it looked and felt like blood.
Ugh, that's so disturbing.
And then she felt this, hand on her back, pushing her towards the sink.
Oh, my God.
It was like whatever was there wanted her to drown.
Oh, this is where the story goes way beyond, like, your typical haunted house, right?
Right.
We're not talking about, like, spooky sounds or flickering lights.
Exactly.
This is like a malevolent entity that's capable of violence.
Yeah.
And is driven by a desire to hurt people.
Yeah, for sure.
So what happens? What happens next?
Thankfully, Carl heard her screaming, and he rushed in. And whatever was tormenting Janet, it just immediately let up.
Okay.
But that experience, it left her completely shaken and terrified.
Understandable.
This incident, it really solidifies Carl's role as a protector, at least in Janet's eyes.
Right.
He becomes this, buffer between her and these really aggressive entities.
So, this is another question then, right?
Yeah.
Why did these spirits seem to tolerate Carl?
It's a mystery that just gets deeper as this story unfolds.
So you'd think, right, after this incident, Bobby would finally accept that something strange was going on.
Right, but even after this terrifying encounter, he remained unconvinced.
Oh my God, this guy.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This unwavering skepticism in the face of, mounting evidence, it suggests something deeper is going on.
Yeah.
Like a deeply ingrained belief system.
Right.
A refusal to accept anything that just challenges his understanding of the world.
So he's basically just choosing to ignore it. Right.
It seems that way.
Yeah, so he insists that there has to be some logical explanation, even as these strange events keep happening around him.
Right.
It's crazy.
So we've got this nightclub, right?
Yeah.
Bobby Mackey's. And it's not your, your typical place,
Yeah.
history, and the paranormal. They just seem to collide there.
It's true.
Creating this, energy that even a skeptic would have to, second guess things.
Yeah, remember that police officer?
Oh, yeah.
The one who was called to the club to investigate a break-in?
Uh-huh.
So he hears music and voices coming from backstage. But
Yeah.
when he goes back there,
Yeah.
nobody's there.
The room is completely empty.
Yeah.
That incident, it seems small, right?
Right.
But it's a good example of how the paranormal activity at Bobby Mackey's, it can be mischievous,
Right.
playful, almost
See,
not always aggressive or threatening.
It's true. And then remember, that same night, that same officer had to go back to the club.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there was a fatal accident in the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
And he needed something to cover the body with.
Oh, my God.
And a young woman appears out of nowhere
No way.
and hands him a tablecloth.
Wow.
But when he goes inside to thank her,
Yeah.
the club's all locked up.
This is one of those stories where it's benevolent, right?
Yeah.
The helpful ghost
Yeah.
appearing just to offer, help in this moment of crisis.
It's true.
But it's still unsettling.
It is. It's creepy.
It adds like a new layer to this whole narrative.
Yeah.
It suggests that maybe not all the entities at Bobby Mackey's are evil or bad.
Right. But it still gives you chills thinking about it.
Oh, absolutely.
So even with all this weird stuff happening,
Yeah.
Bobby's still not convinced.
Really?
No, he just presses on with the renovations.
Wow.
And he's preparing for the club's grand opening.
It's almost like he's willfully blinding himself to the truth.
Right.
He's just determined to like create his own reality, you know?
Yeah, maybe he thought if he just ignored it all,
Yeah.
it would just go away.
But as we know,
Because
that's not how these things usually work.
no.
So meanwhile, Carl,
Yeah.
he's becoming increasingly like preoccupied with the hauntings.
Okay.
He seems convinced that there's more to this story. You know, it's not just random spooky events.
Carl's fascination with all this makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, he's living and working in this place where it's like the veil between the living and the dead is just super thin.
Exactly.
And then he makes this discovery that changes everything.
What is it?
He's cleaning the basement,
Okay.
and he finds this loose floorboard, and hidden underneath
Yeah.
a diary.
Oh, wow.
No, this is like a classic, right?
Yeah.
You find a diary, it introduces, backstory, deepens the mystery.
Exactly.
So, according to Carl, the diary belonged to this former showgirl named Johanna.
Okay.
And she had fallen in love with a musician at the club.
Okay.
But her father,
Yeah.
he forbade their relationship.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he even threatened the musician's life.
It's like a tale as old as time.
Right.
Forbidden love, the jealous father,
Yeah.
the tragic ending.
Exactly. But at Bobby Mackey's, this story, it just takes on this whole other sinister quality.
It makes sense.
So the musician vanishes,
Oh.
and Johanna, she suspects her father's responsible.
Oh, wow.
So she ends up poisoning her father
Oh, my God.
and then taking her own life,
Wow.
vowing to haunt the club until her lover returns to her.
It's like a Shakespearean twist.
Yeah.
Love, loss, revenge.
Yeah.
And it just adds this whole other like emotional depth to the hauntings.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
There's no historical evidence that Johanna ever even existed.
Really?
No.
So was Carl making this up?
I mean, that's what I'm thinking, right?
Right.
Like, is this a fabrication,
Yeah.
a delusion?
I mean, was it brought on by the atmosphere of the club?
Maybe.
It's possible.
Or was there something else to it?
Yeah.
Was she just really good at, like, covering her tracks?
Right.
Maybe she erased herself from history as part of her, like, revenge plot, you know?
I mean, your guess is as good as mine at this point.
My imagination runs wild sometimes.
It's okay, but we're dealing with a lot of unknowns here.
That's true. We do have more questions than answers when it comes to Johanna.
Yeah.
And the fact that the diary itself has never been found
Right.
just adds fuel to the fire.
It does.
So one thing's for sure.
What's that?
Carl believed in Johanna.
Okay.
He saw her as a friend
Uh-huh.
and a protector,
Okay.
at least until he made another chilling discovery
Oh.
in that same basement.
Okay, and this discovery, unlike the diary,
Yeah.
has a very real presence
Yep.
in Bobby Mackey's.
So what
So
is...
we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, so now we've got Reverend Cole, this man of faith, facing down what he believes to be a legion of demonic entities.
Yeah.
And they're all vying for control of Carl Lawson.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like something out of, like, a horror movie.
Right.
But this is all based on real accounts.
This is real. Yeah.
Yeah, and documented events. It's crazy.
It's intense. So the first exorcism actually took place right in the middle of a performance at the club.
Oh, wow.
The band was playing, the place was packed, and suddenly this fire breaks out in the kitchen.
Okay, so was this a coincidence?
Right.
Or was this like a sign from the spirits?
Yeah.
Were they trying to disrupt things, maybe intimidate Reverend Cole?
Yeah, I mean, the timing is definitely unsettling.
It is.
And here's where it gets really strange. After the fire's put out,
Yeah.
most of the patrons just went right back inside.
Really?
Yeah, like nothing happened.
Wow, that's evil.
They were eager to, like, continue the show like it was no big deal.
That's it's giving me chills.
Yeah. So despite the fire and the weird behavior of the crowd,
Yeah.
Reverend Cole decides to go ahead with the exorcism.
Okay.
So he gathers Carl, Doug Hensley, a group of newsmen were there to document it all,
Uh-huh.
and they head to the old kitchen.
So this is the site of Janet's encounter
Yes.
with the bloody sink.
Yeah, it's significant, right?
It is.
Because the old kitchen, this was already like a focal point for the paranormal activity.
Right.
And now it's become like the battleground.
Right, the stage is set.
Exactly. So Reverend Cole, he starts to pray.
Mm.
He's asking for God's help to cleanse the space and free Carl from these spirits.
Okay.
But it doesn't take long for things to take a dark turn.
Oh, no. What happens?
So Carl's demeanor just changes completely.
Yeah.
He starts mumbling under his breath in this low, distorted voice.
Oh, wow.
His eyes are fixed on Reverend Cole.
Yeah.
And it's like with this predatory
That
intensity.
just like something else has taken over.
Yeah, like something else is in control of his body.
Yeah.
And at one point, he even speaks in this strange voice.
Really?
And he says to Reverend Cole, "They'll get me while I'm alone in here."
Oh, my God. So it's like it's trying to play on his sympathy
Right.
to manipulate him, get him to stop the exorcism.
Yeah, Reverend Cole, he recognizes this.
Yeah.
And he keeps praying, commanding the spirits to leave Carl's body.
I mean, the tension must have been incredible.
Oh, absolutely. And accounts describe, like, Carl's body jerking and spasming.
Yeah.
Like he's being physically pulled in different directions by these unseen forces.
It's a reminder that this battle between good and evil,
Yeah.
it's not just a metaphor.
Right.
It can have real consequences in the physical world.
Yeah, so after what felt like hours, Carl suddenly goes limp.
Okay.
And when he looks up at Reverend Cole and he says, "I feel different. Something in me has changed."
So a glimmer of hope,
Right.
a sense of relief.
Like the exorcism worked.
But is it real?
Right.
Is he really free?
And Reverend Cole, he wasn't so sure. He pulls Doug aside
Uh-huh.
and he says, "It isn't over, Carl. Or a spirit was lying to me. The spirits aren't gone." Carl was either protecting them because he's terrified or he doesn't want them to leave.
So Carl's still connected
Yeah.
to the spirits,
In some way.
bound to them.
Yeah, it's a chilling thought, right?
It is.
That the exorcism just like temporarily displaced this darkness.
Right.
So a few weeks later, Reverend Cole goes back to Bobby Mackey's,
Okay.
ready for round 2.
Round 2. Okay.
But this time, it's not going to be a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
This second exorcism took weeks of these intense prayer sessions.
Wow.
And Carl was like writhing in agony.
I mean, this is a reminder of the toll
Yeah.
that this kind of like spiritual warfare takes.
Right.
Not just on the person being exorcised, but on the people trying to help.
And then things get really strange.
Okay, even for Bobby Mackey.
Even for Bobby Mackey. So after one like really grueling session,
Mm-hmm.
Carl's alone in his apartment
Okay.
and he discovers that he's bleeding profusely
Oh, no.
from, wait for it,
Okay.
hemorrhoids.
Hemorrhoids. Wow, that's just bizarre.
Right. It's like this spiritual torment is manifesting in a physical form.
Yeah, it's a painful reminder of how powerful these unseen forces can be.
And these weren't your average hemorrhoids.
Really?
According to Doug Hensley, they were, and I quote, tremendous in size,
Oh my God.
growing and spreading like poison ivy.
It's hard to even imagine the pain that
Right.
he must have been in.
So Carl, he's desperate for relief,
Yeah.
and he knows who to blame.
The spirits.
The spirits. So he cries out to them.
Oh, wow.
And he promises to keep Reverend Cole away
Yeah.
if they just stop hurting him.
So he makes this deal with the devil.
Right. And for a while, it works.
Hmm.
There's this period of calm. No strange occurrences, no demonic activity.
It's the calm before the storm.
Exactly. But this piece, it's shattered when Reverend Cole and Larry Kidwell show up at the club.
Unannounced.
Unannounced, they're determined to finish what they started.
Oh, wow.
Carl, he's terrified.
Yeah.
He thinks about running, hiding, anything to avoid another confrontation.
I mean, this internal conflict that he's going through
Right.
makes his story so compelling.
Yeah.
He's not just a victim.
Right.
He's actively fighting back.
Yeah, but deep down, he knows that running won't solve anything.
Yeah.
So he lets them in, and they go back to that old kitchen for round 2.
The site of the first exorcism.
Yeah, and this second exorcism, as you might expect, is even more intense and frightening than the first. As soon as Reverend Cole begins to pray, Carl's voice changes, shifting between these different entities.
Each one worse than the last.
It's like a parade of tormented souls,
Yeah.
all vying for control of his body.
So this is really where the truth of it all comes out.
Yeah.
This isn't just about individual spirits.
Right.
It's this collective darkness.
Yeah,
A legion of entities.
and they've been feeding on this pain and suffering for decades.
For decades, yeah.
So Reverend Cole, he keeps praying, But they resist.
And fight back.
They shout back at him. They're threatening him, demanding that he stop.
Reverend Cole's faith in the
Yeah.
face of all of this, it's remarkable.
He doesn't give up. He keeps praying. And eventually, after hours of struggling,
Yeah.
Carl's body starts to convulse violently.
Oh, wow.
And then, one by one, they leave.
They're gone.
Gone. Banished back to the darkness.
But the question is the evil really gone?
Right. Is this just a temporary fix?
I mean, the history of this place suggests that the darkness has a way of coming back.
It does. So the second exorcism's done.
Uh-huh.
But the story, it's not over.
Right.
Carl feels this sense of relief.
Makes sense.
The fear, the voices, the feeling of being watched, it's all gone.
He must have felt so liberated.
Yeah, but there's also a sense of sadness.
Wow.
He had formed this attachment to these spirits.
Especially Johanna.
Especially Johanna. He saw her as a friend, a protector.
Even though
she was clearly troubled.
Troubled, yeah. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's like he's grieving
the
loss of them.
Even though they were causing him all this pain.
Right.
And Reverend Cole, he warns him, these spirits might try to come back.
They might.
If they can't find another suitable host, they'll come back to Bobby Mackey's.
Oh, no.
And they'll bring more with them.
This is a scary thought.
It is. So did they come back?
That's the question.
We don't really know.
Right.
Some say Carl never had any more paranormal activity.
Okay.
Others say he continued to sense them lurking in the shadows.
Waiting to come back.
I mean, that ambiguity, unresolved tension.
That's what makes this story so fascinating.
Exactly. It makes you think about good and evil and the power of belief and just the mystery of the paranormal world.
Yeah. Some doors are best left closed, right?
Yeah.
Some secrets are best left buried.
Agreed.
So what about the club itself?
Yeah, Bobby Mackey's.
Did the exorcisms cleanse it? Well, Bobby Mackey's is still open today.
It is.
And it's become this, popular spot for people who are interested in the paranormal.
Oh, wow.
Bobby actually posted a sign behind the bar acknowledging the haunting.
He leans into it.
He does, but he also absolves himself of any responsibility.
Smart.
It's a clever way to market the place, for sure.
Uh-huh.
But you have to wonder, does he really believe it?
Right, or is it all just part of the show?
And Janet, sadly, she never felt comfortable there again. She passed away in 2009.
Oh, wow.
But thankfully, there were no more reports of paranormal activity.
At least not in her own home.
Yeah, so maybe the exorcisms did bring some peace, at least for Janet.
It's a bittersweet ending.
To her part in this story.
It is.
So where does all of this leave us?
That's a good question.
Is Bobby Mackey's music world really haunted?
Yeah.
Are those spirits still lurking, waiting to make themselves known?
It's the ultimate unsolved mystery.
It is, and we've got eyewitness accounts, we have documented evidence.
We do.
We have the testimony of a minister.
It's all there.
But the answer ultimately lies in what you choose to believe.
Right.
Do you embrace the possibility of the paranormal?
That there are forces beyond our understanding.
Or do you stick to the logical explanations?
Right.
Coincidence.
Overactive imagination.
The power of suggestion.
It's up to you.
The choice is yours.
But one thing's for sure, the story of Bobby Mackey's is a testament to the unknown, the allure of the paranormal.
And our fascination with the things that go bump in the night.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has only scratched the surface of this story.
It really has.
If you're intrigued, we encourage you to do your own research, check out the accounts, and if you're feeling brave, maybe even visit Bobby Mackey's.
Yeah.
Just remember, you've been warned.